Yo, what's up guys? Today I wanted to take a look at the new Dance of Dragons development server for War Thunder that recently came out. I'm going to especially take a look at ground forces today, going through each of the vehicles and analyzing its armor, firepower, and mobility. I created a couple documents and spreadsheets that I put in the description if you'd like to go through it at your own pace. But I wanted to just kind of break it down into each section and kind of put it against its most popular competitors at the exact same BRs or very similar BRs and ranks as the vehicles already are. And I spent a lot of time trying to make this informative to go more in depth on these vehicles. So we'll kick it off going left to right between all the nations, beginning with the USA. US currently gets one new vehicle, the T-81U-E1 This tank comes at rank 3 and a battle rating of 5.7 in realistic, put right after the M41A1 Jumbo in the heavy tank line in the center. To begin with its armor, I'm putting it against the most popular 5.7s from each nation. The armor is all at 1,000 meters using the best possible shell, not including APCR. As you can see, the armor isn't that good, nearly identical to the T-81 at 5.3. You could stop some shells in a down tier, maybe at 110 millimeters of protection, but literally all guns at that BR will probably go through you despite you being a heavy tank. So I wouldn't rely too much on the armor unless you get a solid down tier or not a big up tier. Moving on to the firepower, the gun is really what stands out on this vehicle. You effectively get a 6.7 battle rating gun at 5.7, packing a punch way above your weight class and having a backup 37mm for tracking or killing lightly armored targets like wheeled vehicles or anti-airs. You get access to M82, giving it around 185mm of penetration, which is really good for 5.7. And the post-pen damage of 90mm is going to be a lot better than most 75s or 85s out there. Finally, talking about its mobility, as you can see, it has some of the highest horsepower per ton ratio at its BR bracket, despite losing out on some top speed to things like the Tiger H1 and tying with the IS-1 for top speed. Its massive 708 horsepower engine and amazing transmission, giving you 6 forward and 6 reverse gears up to its max speed in any direction, is really an advantage at your BR bracket and is such a massive engine. It should allow you to quickly move around the battlefield and able to play this tank effectively, basically as a medium tank, a really big medium tank for that matter. And for a minor update, the M41A1 Walker Bulldog is receiving a brand new model. So here is the old model, and I'm going to swap it over. This is the new model. Germany also receives one new vehicle, the Puma VJTF. This IFV comes at rank 7 at a battle rating of 10.7 in realistic battles. This new vehicle is a near identical copy to the regular Puma just before it at 10.0. However, it gains access to spike missiles, something very hit or miss in War Thunder, but still something very fun to use occasionally, and will get you some funny kills. Like the standard Puma before, as a quote-unquote lightly armored vehicle, it is extremely survivable, able to tank tons of heat FS shells and occasionally shrug off APFSDS due to its really good armor for its weight class. The explosive reactive armor on the sides can shrug off around 500mm of chemical protection. It also has access to a laser warning system to warn you if you are being targeted, and it has a must APS system that can defeat earlier laser guided missiles, but however these are usually only Gen 1s and you won't really see those at 10.7, but still useful to have than not have. Utilizing the exact same gun as the standard Puma, its firepower consists of the 30mm Mark 30-2 ABM cannon, giving it access to PMC 287C, giving it around 121mm of penetration. Spikes are able to penetrate most, if not literally all tanks at your battle rating. However, Spike's issue is usually in killing anything besides the gun breech or the gun barrel, because they have a tendency to always hit the center mass, and that consists of just being eaten up by the gun breech. To talk quickly about its optical suite, it consists of thermals for both the gunner and commander, with access to a laser rangefinder, of course, as a rank 7. Its gunner optics also have an infrared search and track up to 6.2 miles, so you are able to shoot down aircrafts up to probably around half that with consistently. If they decide to finally fix A-head ammo, it will be a lot better, but still having higher ST on an IFV is one of the best things you can possibly have. Like I've been constantly stating, the mobility now is nearly identical to the original Puma at 10.0. Having a really good power to weight ratio and solid top speed, it allows it to slip into 4th place out of the 10 tracked IFVs at top tier. I tried not to include any wheeled vehicles because they would probably be way too above and a different class in general. Freccia is currently receiving another anti-air vehicle, the ZTZ99A M2. This anti-air will fill the small gap between the 7.0 ZSU57 and the 7.7 ZSU37. Sitting at, of course, 7.3 in the rank 5 of the tech tree. It's very similar to the Shoka, however, it loses access to the radar, but nearly has double the ammo capacity at 4,000 rounds compared to the Shoka's regular 2,000 rounds, allowing you to spray down aircrafts more effectively since you do not have radar tracking. Similar to the regular Shoka, the armor is completely lackluster, and with the increased ammo capacity up to 4,000 rounds, basically your entire turret is full of ammo, and the hull is not able to even tank 50 cals. So most, if not all, planes or tanks with a 50 cal or 20 millimeters at this point will be able to strafe you down. So don't rely on its armor for anything really effective, but no armor best armor against APFSDS. Utilizing the Shoka's AZP 23 23mm guns in a quad mount, firepower for an anti-air at 7.3 is very powerful, especially due to the high rate of fire and large ammo capacity. Despite having much less penetration than ZSU57s, which are effectively tank destroyers in the first place, the ZSU23-4M2 has a significantly higher fire rate, allowing it to much easier track and hit faster moving fighters or CAS aircraft, making it much more suited for the anti-air role rather than the ZSU57s, which are significantly better at tank hunting or maybe helicopter sniping if you're really good at them. The mobility for the ZSU23-4M2 is pretty below average. If you're used to the regular Shoka, it's basically identical to that. Many other SPAAs at the same BR and class have much higher power to weight ratios and better transmissions. Despite having similar top speeds, the Shoka has a much weaker engine, which really lets it down in the performance category. Freccia is also receiving another small model update. The T-80U-E1 pack rank 7 11.3 premium is receiving a brand new camo net, which is looking really nice. Great Britain is receiving a new rank 7 battle rating 10.0 anti-air vehicle, the Stormer Air Defense. The Stormer AD takes the GAU-12 25mm gun, adds a dual Stinger launcher above it, and places the turret on the Stormer chassis. It also gains access to a search radar, making it much easier to engage and find air targets, and being placed right before the Stormer HVM and after the Chieftain Marksman. Similar to many other SPAAs, the armor is mostly lackluster, especially being placed on the Stormer chassis, making it weak to anything stronger than 50 cals. Despite the turret being relatively unarmored, the hull has some sloping, and the 5mm plating make it somewhat capable of surviving 30 cals. But anything 50 cal or up, just don't rely on its armor. You're not going to survive much with it. Moving on to something a bit more important, its firepower. Using the 25mm GAU-12U rotary gun, its firepower for a 10.0 anti-air gun is pretty solid, and Burt guns go Burt. Having a backup dual Stinger launcher on the roof is very helpful in shooting down aircraft, and you have 8 missiles spare to fire. It gains access to thermals for the gunner sight as well, making it easier to find helicopters at longer distances or closer to the horizon. Following up with its range, the Stormer Air Defense has a decent radar, nothing impressive like the Gepard's 2S6s or Type 87s. However, solid tracking along with FIM 92Ks that you sadly have to grind for, similar to many other SPAAs at SBR, will more than likely make it a solid SPAA. Coupled with the fact the Stormer HVM is known for its unreliability, so people will more than likely take the air defense over the HVM, despite the insane HVM players still able to keep the stats on that thing insanely high. Finishing up with its mobility, it's basically summarized as mediocre. Similar to the HVM, it has a decent transmission, but a mediocre power to weight ratio and a alright top speed if you ever manage to reach it. However, it's nothing that you're going to just solely rely on like the LAV AD to flank enemies. So you're mostly going to be playing a supportive or anti-air role rather than being a tank destroyer. Now Japan is getting a brand new squadron vehicle, the RCVP, at rank 7 sitting at 9.7. This modern armored recon vehicle boasts the 30mm Bushmaster, has solid maneuverability due to its 6x6 chassis, allowing it to easily flank and destroy enemies. It also comes with a special elevated commander optics used for reconnaissance that also gains thermals, as well as the gunner having thermals. This will allow it to search targets behind cover or smaller hills that you do not have to expose yourself to find enemies on the flanking routes. Like other wheeled IFVs at top tier, the RCV relies on no armor best armor to tank APFSDS shells. Don't rely on the armor itself for defeating autocannons or getting strafed by higher caliber guns, but in extreme circumstances, the lower front plate can tank 25mm or 20mm autocannons at longer range, and the sloped upper plate can maybe tank 50 cals to 20mm at longer range. However, this should definitely not be relied on, and you should rely on your speed and maneuverability to be getting around targets or peeking at them from ridgelines. For firepower, it is utilizing the well-known and renowned 30mm Bushmaster 2 autocannon. The RCV now gains very good pen values because of this, and it has a solid fire rate. It also has thermals for both the commander and gunner. The 30mm Bushmaster also usually outperforms non-NATO 30mm guns like on the ZBD-04, and the smaller 25mm Bushmaster is obviously going to be less performing in terms of penetration values. It is beaten, however, by the Swedish 40mm Bofors, but this is still a great gun to rely on and something completely valuable to have, especially at 9.7. Despite there being not many wheeled IFVs at top tier, the RCVP ranks second out of all 5. Boasting a really good power to weight ratio, decent top speed, it should be easily able to flank enemies and get into solid positions early in the game, or help you rush a cap late in the match to prevent a loss. The Antelope ADS is a 10-3 rank 7 SAM in the Chinese tech tree, sitting right after the PGZ-04A and the Tor M1. This new Taiwanese SAM system is basically a truck with Skysword missiles, and despite these Skyswords being IR guided, they do have IRCCM and 30 Gs of overload, so that should be able to help with taking down CAS aircraft with a lot of flares or fighter jets above the map. However, due to them being IR guided at 10.3, it means you're going to have some difficulty finding helicopters, but a search radar is available for helping find and detect aircraft. Its armor is really nothing to talk about. It's a regular 4x4 light tactical vehicle, and as a SAM system, it's not really supposed to be in frontline infantry combat, so it lacks even the basics like bulletproof glass for the 3 people in the front of the truck. So in reality, just don't rely on it surviving much. Even getting strafed by an aircraft is going to kill you in this thing, so don't bother with the armor. Moving on to the most important aspect, the SAM launcher itself. The SAM launcher consists of 4 TC-1L Taiwanese Skysword missiles. These missiles have 30 Gs of overload, IRCCM, and a really solid tracking range. These missiles should be best at defeating CAS aircraft or fighters over the battlefield, but you're going to have some difficulty with helicopters because IR missiles have trouble tracking them at longer ranges and really have a lot of difficulty hitting them. However, with the 3.7 mile launch range and the 6.8 mile rear tracking range, with a full 60 seconds of guidance, it should be pretty good at defeating aircraft. Its radar, though, is not currently modeled in the development server, but its real life statistics were that it had a 18 miles of search range and 12 miles of tracking range, which is basically going to spot you literally anything that spawns on the ground or in the air on the helicopters or aircraft side. Finally, its mobility is pretty good, being on a small 4x4 truck and having above power to weight ratio and a really good top speed. It should be able to get in some solid positions in the back line or behind some hills and out of cover for most enemies trying to kill you. You can use this to also help push cap zones or kind of skirt around the side of the battlefield, but I wouldn't be too aggressive with your lack of anything anti-ground related. It's not anything like Type 93 speeds, but it's still pretty alright for its size, and it is definitely above average. China receives a brand new rank 7 premium ground vehicle as well, the Al-Khalid-I, sitting at 10.7. Well, this new premium is a development of the MBT 2000 with modified FY2 ERA blocks around the sides of the turret. To top tier China players already, I mean, you should be familiar with the MBT 2000. It's on the left tree, so it should be pretty familiar and should be a really solid top tier option for grinding Chinese ground forces, especially as a pack vehicle. The armor is pretty solid, similar to the MBT 2000 of course. You can take most APFSDS on the extremely sloped upper front plate and around the outer sides of the turret. However, that large lower front plate will just definitely eat APFSDS shells, and it will be vulnerable to most things at your BR bracket, and the areas right around the gun breech where there's no ERA is especially pretty vulnerable. So unless someone's shooting your upper plate on accident, I wouldn't rely too much on it, but it's still pretty good to have. Its firepower consists of the well-known 125mm ZTZ99A cannon. It's used on many other top-tier Chinese vehicles, so this 125mm gun has really good penetration values, up to 577mm, and even has access to a variable time fuse HE that you can use to try and shoot down helicopters that get a bit too close to the battlefield. And it comes with a quick autoloader at around 7.1 seconds. So overall, this gun's really reliable, has really good penetration values, and a solid reload rate. So overall, really good gun. The mobility for the Al-Khalid is also pretty solid. It's not as fast as like NATO MBTs in terms of raw horsepower per ton, but overall it's pretty decent, and it's not slow like a Merkava or Challenger. It's still easily able to flank enemies, push objectives, get around the sides of battlefields, and it's pretty mobile for that matter. So overall, it's not amazing, something to write home about, but it's something still pretty good, especially when compared to other premium MBTs out there. On a smaller note, the ZTZ99A for China got a small visual model update. So here's the old model, and here's the new model. For Italy, the Freccia received the Janus optical systems for the commander, so it should be pretty helpful in ground RB. For France, the CV90-35NL is a Dutch CV90 armed with a 35mm Bushmaster 3 cannon. It sits at 10.0 in the French ground forces tech tree, and it is a squadron vehicle. This vehicle is very similar to the CV90-35DK in the Swedish tech tree. However, it gains these 25mm composite armor plates around the sides of the vehicles. It should be a relatively decent IFV, as much as people don't recommend you buy the 90-35, but France currently has no real 10.0 lineup to run with it, so we're going to see what happens to this thing at release. As stated above, the armor consists of the regular CV90-35DK at 9.7 in the Swedish tech tree. However, it has these Pro composite plates. These Pro plates, as they are called, are all around the vehicle's body, including the turret and the hull. Then they're around 25mm thick. It should help you survive more autocannon fire on the upper front plate, especially due to its sloping, and it can stop 25mm or some 20mm autocannons, stuff like that. However, most of those autocannons can go through the lower front plate and the turret, so it shouldn't be solely relied on. It also gains a laser warning system for extra protection in case you are being lased. Its firepower consists of the 35mm Bushmaster 3 autocannon, utilizing thermals for both the gunner and commander. This autocannon is relatively solid for top tier, and although it is weaker than the CV90's 40mm Bofors in terms of raw penetration values, it has a much larger ammo pool at 35 rounds. It also has a 10-second autoloader. So overall, it's pretty solid. Its mobility is middle of the road, but that's pretty good for IFVs at top tier, and sits in the exact center in terms of raw horsepower per ton and max speed. It's basically similar to other CV90s and identical to the CV90-35, and it's nothing to write home about, but still pretty good. The KV-1 M1942 is a new Swedish premium, sitting at rank 3 and a battle rating of 5.0, and it is a Golden Eagles premium. This new vehicle is basically a Finnish captured KV-1, and is the later model KV-1, currently not in the game in the Russian tree. This later model KV-1 basically had a modified turret with more rounded sides and a better armored front plate, so it would be a bit more survivable than the regular KVs. This will be probably a really good vehicle for grinding low tier Sweden, and probably would be highly recommended. The best part of this premium by far is the armor. On top of the KV-1's already being super survivable, the later KV-1 had that improved turret with the more sloping on the sides, which means you're just going to bounce shells really well. And it also has the up armored front plate, similar to what the Russian later KVs have. So overall, you should basically eat shells in a down tier and be really survivable. The only thing that's going to bother you is if you get up tiered to like 6.0 or 5.7, where you start getting longer 88s and 90mm guns. But besides that, it'll be very good. Being a KV1, of course, that means the firepower is also really solid. It uses the 76mm ZIS-5 cannon, and although this gun does not have really insane penetration values, it's only up to like 100mm at best. The shells themselves have basically just tons of explosives, and if you get a penetration on any single target, it will basically nuke the entire crew. And that's what's the best part about this gun. So although your reload isn't that great, you have like a 9-second reload, and you can get to the 6.9 well spaded. Just penetrate a vehicle and it dies. That's your job, and that's what it'll be good at. Although you don't really have insane mobility, the KV1 is still pretty good for its BR. You're not going to be flanking enemies like at full speed going around the entire map, but your armor along with your gun is going to allow you to just push to objectives non-stop, and you aren't slow to the point where it's very annoying like some Churchills are, but you're going to be moderately quick, not faster than anything else, but good enough to not be painful. The Israeli Tiran 6 is a new 8.7 rank 6 vehicle in the center line of the tech tree. This new Tiran is a captured T-62 in Israeli service. However, unlike the captured T-55s and T-54s, the Israelis never really massively upgraded the T-62s to the standard. So what they did was they did some small Western modernizations, like slapping 50 cals and 30 cals absolutely everywhere. And it will be very similar to the T-62 already in the Soviet tech tree at the exact same battle rating. While the armor analysis is currently bugged in the development server for the T-62, it's identical to the one already in the game at this point. It's summarized as better than its contemporaries, although the front plate can bounce a good portion of shells depending on the angle, and the sides of the turret are pretty trolly, especially around the top. The best APFSDS will probably go through the front plate of this thing, so although it's decent at being pretty trolly, it will not be completely survivable against spaded tanks. However, it's really good at surviving autocannon fire due to its heavily armored sides and front, so 25mm and 20mm will have some trouble pushing through it. By far the best aspect of this tank though is its gun. It has the insanely good 115mm U5 TS cannon, and being at 8.7, this cannon is fully stabilized and has a very powerful shell for its battle rating. It's easily able to punch through every single other MBT at your BR. With a maxed out crew, you can also beat the reload of many other Western tanks as long as they don't have a fully spaded crew as well. So overall, really good gun, and this is something that's going to be the best aspect of this tank. For its mobility, the T-62 is a bit more sluggish than other MBTs around its bracket. Having a lackluster transmission and a below average engine performance, its horsepower per ton ratio is pretty lacking. You will be relying on your gun and armor a lot more than its speed and flanking potential, since a lot of Western MBTs will be able to get to strategic positions or sniping spots before you do. So rely on that gun and moderately rely on the armor, but its speed will probably not be the best. Well, that wraps up my analysis of the new ground forces in the Dance of Dragons development server for War Thunder. I hope you found this breakdown helpful. If you want a deeper dive, I've left all the relevant documents in the description if you'd like to save some at your own pace. And with the development server closing in 2 days, I'm hoping to get an aircraft video done. This one took around 4 days to make, so I hope you really enjoyed this detailed breakdown. And if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, I'm going to try and make these for future or upcoming development servers for the next few updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.